Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of QQ. This is going to be a discussion on Akira from 1988. I'm Paul Weston. Over there is Torin McLaughlin. And to give a quick synopsis of the review is that it's supposed to be one of the most well-known films, renowned films, sorry. Wow, that was a beep
I
there.
just I just pressed a button. Sorry,
and
internet.
and
Rip. Be serious.
Yeah, and so it's supposed to be one of the most well-renowned films, and I gave it a B minus, and Tony gave it a C plus. So I'm
Yeah.
sure if you're here, you want to know why we gave it rather low grades, considering it's supposed to be a fantastic film. Um,
Oh, I was
and
giving it like one of those C plus pops, like those fizzy drinks.
yeah, I'll
I
see.
don't know. I thought it could use like a pick me up or something.
So, Torn, why don't you just lead us into sort of our first intended discussion of um, where it fits in pulp culture and sort of its inability to sort of age as well as we had hoped.
In pop culture, pulp culture, you know, I'm not an expert on it.
Yeah.
All I know is that there are many films in the 80s that meditate on this sort of setting and this genre, like science fiction set in dystopic urban setting of decay
Mm.
type deal. It's not the first to do this. Blade Runner 1982 comes 6 years before the manga. The manga actually starts 1982. Akira, the movie's based on the manga. So I didn't find it that revolutionary in terms of the themes anyway. I thought like a lot of films around this time were already doing this. It's like IGN has it at 14th on its list of top 25 animated movies of all time. It's on the Empire magazine's list of 500 greatest movies, not just animated movies, and their 100 best films of world cinema. It's like number 51. It's had an influence on sci-fi in live action, like The Matrix. There's even sort of an offshoot called Tetsuo the Iron Man.
Interesting.
It's on Time Magazine's list of top 5 anime DVDs. I'm just sort of reading off information here. It was very influential, and it looks a lot like Blade Runner. It looks a lot sort of like a Terry Gilliam type Brazil.
Yeah, that's what I was
like
thinking.
12 Monkeys sort of dystopic thriller, and
So
it
why do you,
deals with like abnormal psychology or like parapsychology. I don't know.
So
It's
why
got
do
a lot
you
of the hallmarks of like the 80s coming out of it. I'm not sure what the 80s was trying to do and meditate on urban decay so aggressively, but
so what do you think? Why do you think we didn't? Because like we had just seen Paprika, and you and I loved it. We thought it was fantastic. So it's not a fact of like we're just anime haters, right? So why
no.
do you think we just didn't particularly care for this film? Like, what do you think was the? I'm sure there's a lot of reasons, and like one of them we'll get to in terms of like character structure and stuff. But like other than that, like why do you think we just didn't care for it?
Well, we didn't care for it. I didn't care for it because of the character interaction primarily. I think it does a lot of cool things. Other animes that I've seen, like some of the Studio Ghibli films, they meditate on real world themes, but they've got this like transmogrified. They have animals in there instead of humans, and things. They tend to dwell on sort of mystery and mystique and imagination, and dreaming and I don't know, these sort of like fluffier themes, I guess, which are not fluffy. I don't mean to denigrate them or anything, but this one has like gore in it, It's got violence, and it's trying to give off this gritty sort of appeal that makes it more like, or seems to make it more serious, as if it wanted to be live action or something. I don't think it's very realistic in terms of the gore. It's gorier than a Tarantino film,
Yeah.
Some of these things are impossible. You can just have people's brains explode like they do in some ways.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it definitely abuses the animation to make it to like hyper realistic. I don't know. It's not.
Well, the thing
So I expected that coming in, and I didn't exactly get it. Maybe that's part of why I was dissatisfied, but I think it had more generally to do with the character interaction. So
yeah.
you had a good explanation of why who doesn't, who should be the protagonist? Why should we care about this person instead of that? So
Um, yeah, like before we get to the character thing, I guess I'm kind of confused. I guess I always question why I don't like something that's sort of so well renowned. And at least with like sometimes it's just like because I remember the last one that we sort of had the same kind of issue was one of the latest Studio Ghibli films that we saw
right.
when you were actually in Vancouver together, I believe, and it was holy moly, what was it called?
I can't remember. It's sort of like the watercolor animation style one.
Yeah, it was the one with the girl and the bamboo stick, um, and we had sort of the same issue with it, I believe. It's just we just didn't
It's
particularly.
Princess Kaguya.
Yeah, Kaguya.
Tale of Princess Kaguya. Yeah.
And we just like it's sort of the same thing. We just didn't particularly care for characters, and so I guess it's just like what was it the animation that made it like the actual colors and sound and stuff like was that its overwhelming appeal and like it just hasn't aged and like that's why we don't care about it as much and like those that watch it again have sort of a nostalgic effect because like I think that's a similar thing that happens with like Final Fantasy VII because like if you play that game now the story is melodramatic the characters like I mean the animation is literally the characters are blocks they have arms that are like cardboard box looking things the guy's hair is like this just sharp yellow looking thing and it's just and yet I always have this urge to go back and try and finish that game because guilty me I only got to the end of disc 2 but I'm wondering if like Akira just kind of suffers through that and I feel like I guess I'm missing out on something and so like I guess I wish I knew why someone like Christopher Nolan wants to make this into a trilogy. He clearly sees something really interesting and like does he think I can rewrite this so that the characters interact better and all that sort of stuff but then like at what point is it just I don't know will it be a loose adaptation or like will it be pretty on point because if it's pretty on point I don't want Christopher Nolan to do it I want him to do something else right like it's
I don't know. I think it would be very interesting for him to do it. I think what they would have to do to make it a live action is definitely clean up the sci-fi a bit and insert some better dialogue. I don't mind when thrillers or action movies have schlocky, very conventional dialogue. Like I wanted to see that new Keanu movie, John Wick, because the trailer looks so hilarious. Every line is like, it could be. It's a bad Horatio Caine line from CSI Miami.
Yeah.
I love those sort of taglines and stuff, and I don't mind when a film does it. When it does it like well, I think it operates on a basis of good dialogue throughout. It's got to start from a place where the character interactions are believable and the characters are multifaceted. And I only thought one of these characters was, and I think it was the general or the commander, the military commander.
Yeah.
Typically, that's a position that we associate with high potential for abuse of authority. And it turns out that he's got the city's best interests at heart, and he's sort of looking to safeguard this power. He's ultimately funding and organizing this like massive investigation into psychic power, but his purpose in doing so is ultimately to learn how to control it, so that there will never, they can protect the city. So it's kind of one of those funny things. He maybe has the wrong intent or wrong scheme, but he has sort of a good heart. And I thought he was like the most dynamic character, and that he's not even that dynamic.
Yeah. Well, like
you don't
that's
learn about his past at all or anything. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Because with him, like one of the very first things that we hear him say is like, okay, look into this boy who's Tetsuo, and he's like, see what he's like, but if we can't control it, kill him. Like, don't let him live, just kill him. We can't risk it, right?
Which is the merciful option and the safest for the city, right?
Right, and so it's like he and Tetsuo are pretty similar, and it's almost like they're the Colonel's almost the foil to Tetsuo. In terms of like, okay, they're both powerful, but how they use it and why they're using it are two pretty different ways, and they still are both pretty destructive, and they still both create sort of a really undesirable effect. And so maybe the film is sort of saying like, look, if you have a certain amount of power and you abuse it, no matter what you do, you are going to destroy something by abusing power, and so you just can't. No matter what you think your ends are, more often than not, it will end that. And like, okay, that's something that I found that's interesting. Okay, that's cool. But if the Colonel is a foil to Tetsuo, and Colonel is not the protagonist, and he's not the antagonist, what is Kaneda doing in this film? He's literally, we're watching Macduff's movie. Like, it's like from Macbeth, because like Macbeth gets all powerful, and he's like, oh, let's kill the king, and gets all crazy, and also like his power ends up destroying him in the same way that this the power destroys Tetsuo. And like Macduff is the guy that ultimately kills him and everything, right? And like Kaneda is sort of the same way, but even that, like, okay, so that's fine. So we're basically watching Macbeth in the eyes of Macduff. But the thing
is, not like cool. It's not a cool dislocation or anything.
Yeah, it's not. It's like the thing is, it's like even if Kaneda wasn't there, chances are, like, okay, maybe he stopped. He'd slowed down. He slowed down Tetsuo a little bit so that the little kids could get Akira and all that sort of stuff. But if your protagonist is literally like his main purpose is to slow down the antagonist by like 2.5 minutes, so that other characters of more power and more interesting storylines can create this ball of energy that then destroys it. Like, I don't need to see this dude for 2 hours. I really don't. And one of the main issues for me with Tetsuo is that, like, I literally wrote in my notes here, Tetsuo is kind of a dick. Like, it's just like...
I don't see... He's pretty one-dimensional.
Yeah,
you never really get any sympathy for him. Like, you had a very good point. You never get sympathy for Tetsuo until the very final sequences of their battle.
Yeah, and by then, it's too late. I don't care, right? Like, I'm just kind of waiting for the film to end. Because I wrote, like, this storyline would be a million times more compelling if I cared about Tetsuo. Like, okay, if he goes to the bar and he kills the barkeeper, if I care about him, that's like, no, please. It's like it could have been like the point of no return. He just went and killed somebody for no reason. I know that you're inherently a good person. Like, please save yourself. This is okay, cool. That's a turning point. In this film, it's just like, okay, now he's just being a complete dick. Like, the barkeeper didn't do anything to him, and it just makes me like him even less. Right?
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're trying to prove the thesis that ultimate power corrupts, absolutely, you've got to start with at least the germ of a good human being to show that. And there's not enough setup in the case of Tetsuo for us to either care about his descent into madness or to latch onto even in the first place to say like, wow, that he was really corrupted, because there's no original place that we come from. We don't have a reference for that. We just know that he's jealous of Kaneda because Kaneda's always been sort of an older brother figure to him, and because he's the leader of the gang, etc. He wants his bike. We see him like playing around on Kaneda's bike. The first scene, I think, we're introduced to him, and he seems like he's just going to be sort of a minor character. There's something there, but they really don't follow through enough.
Yeah, like there's one moment where it's like, when Tetsuo, which by the way, just the way he's drawn, his head and stuff, that he has a weird head shape. I didn't like it. I mean, it's a very minor point, but it was kind of bugged me the whole time I was watching the film.
Yeah, me too. It's sort of light bulby and
yeah. But that's anyways. Moving on. there's only one point of sort of like where he's having these like major headaches and he gets sort of recaptured by the government or the military. Right before he does, he's like, I don't need you to save me anymore. I'm fine, all that sort of stuff. And it's like, okay, I guess that kind of came out of nowhere, sort of. I guess this is sort of like he just starts beating somebody up, and then Kanada's like, yo, stop. And he goes, you don't know me. Stop controlling me. You're an asshole. You're dumb. Oh, God, headaches. Oh, and leave and gone. You're like, okay. Like, there's no sort of, for me, logical build-up in terms of dialogue, which I feel like that there was room to do that. And, like, if you even give the guy one save the cat moment, just one moment, I'm like, okay, he's probably inherently a good guy. Oh no, I forget the girl's name, but the girl that's cares about Tetsuo, she literally gets her shirt ripped off, and you actually see her like upper half, right? And I think he's like, don't do it, stop, whatever. When we realize she like comes to and everything, he's not even like over there being like, are you okay? Are you alright? Like, dude, you got beat up pretty bad. Instead, he's over on the other side of the street beating the shit out of some guy. And when the girl comes to, she walks over to him and he's like, go away. Don't talk to me. And I'm like, are you out of your mind? Like, that could have been the point where he's like, oh, okay, you're alright, you're awake. I'm protecting you. I kicked this guy's ass away, all that sort of stuff. Like, it could at least give him, like,
Well, that's
like,
actually sort of a more sensitive moment to me that shows how, when people are bitter, they tend to close off avenues of friendship and empathy and that sort of thing, and isolating behavior that makes them more bitter and contributes to their sort of downfall. So I found that more believable. I don't know. I just think he felt more like a tool to the plot. Yeah. Because obviously characters are tools to the plot in a general sense always. But it just feels too convenient for him to have the one motive. Okay, what's his motive? Yeah, he's jealous of this guy's power and influence, and he doesn't want to feel like a little kid anymore. And it's so one-dimensional that I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, but that's sort of my issue. Is like, okay, it wasn't that scene was kind of like unbelievable in terms of him treating that girl that way. It's just that the main issue that they have with this storyline of this character could have been solved by just doing what I said, right? And like, okay, if you want to show him slipping away and all this sort of stuff, you literally have like an hour and a half worth of that stuff already with the film, right? You could have used this moment to give us a moment, just one, that we have Tetsuo doing quote unquote the right thing, right?
Being tender.
Pardon?
Being like tender and empathetic.
Yeah, and like you could have done also like sort of done a dynamic thing where like he's no longer being protected, but he's protecting, right? So it loops on itself anyways. Because one of the parts he says to Kaneda when they're in the baby room is like, haha, you don't need to protect me anymore. I can protect you. You just need to say the word, right? So like it would even loop back on that, right? And like the most tender moment I think I have for Tetsuo is when, God, I wish I remembered the girl's name. But when the girl comes up and he accidentally swallows her, and like she's getting squished, and he's like, Kaneda, you have to help me, please.
She's gonna die.
She's gonna die. Like I cared, right? And like I think honestly, believe it or not, I think a lot of it, even though I don't understand Japanese, I do think a lot of that was the voice acting. It's one of those things where like I didn't understand the language, but I felt the emotion, and I believe I believe that guy was freaking the fuck out, kind of thing, right? But by then it was sort of a little too late. But like, imagine if we actually cared about this character. That would have been like heartbreaking. I would have just been like all over the place emotionally, and so it's just.
Yeah, like, it's no like Krillin exploding or anything, because that killed me. That cut me deep, man. But yeah. I think the girls in the film are really underused. They're really flat. There are two girls in the film. except for the little female child figure who's probably the most, she gets the most screen time, or about the same amount of screen time as Kei.
Mm.
But Kei is really like Tetsuo's girlfriend. She's just sort of a rag doll, and she follows Tetsuo sort of thing. She's not very well written. Kei is a little more interesting. She's involved in espionage, and she becomes Kanita's love interest, and that's the vehicle by which Kanita gets into the military base and like is able to follow Tetsuo as he becomes wrapped up with Kei's like sort of spy ring.
Just hearing
but
that,
she's like cool. She's a cool character, and there's
Yeah.
something about the way that she's drawn that seems to say, "Watch her." You know, she's going to be important, and she is. But she's mostly just a tool for the plot, and it's sort of a piss off.
yeah. Well, just even hearing you say like that's how Kaneda gets through it, it just furthers my point of like Kaneda doesn't need to be the protagonist. At least like I would probably, I mean, yeah, the story would have to change a little bit. Like you could literally just change this into sort of a Macbeth kind of thing where Tetsuo is the protagonist, right? And we give us more time to actually get sort of a sympathetic character. And like, okay, we need to find a character that would be the person that would stop him. But like you already have one, like you already mentioned, you could do the girl. Like the girl could do all this stuff. Kei could without Kaneda there, right?
Well, she's like the most heroic character in the film, almost. Her and the commander. You know, Kaneda is sort of like an anti-hero, and I think they try and play up the like Han Solo aspect of his behavior, like, oh, he's just sort of a wild, cavalier cowboy type deal, and he's going to make jokes when you shouldn't make jokes, and that's supposed to make him lovable and that sort of thing. But it's actually not redeeming, you know. And maybe it's a comment on that sort of character. Maybe it's because Tetsuo is not a hero. I don't even think he's an anti-hero, and Kaneda's not an anti-hero. Certainly, he's not likable enough. Because he's just sort of like I don't know, ditzy. You know?
Yeah.
I could see maybe how it could be interesting from if they built it more from the perspective of Tetsuo, you know, who sees, and they build up more of like the jealousy aspect, and Kaneda does some like really cool brave stuff, and like really cool bike acrobatics and shit, and like we're supposed to think that, oh man, he's so great, and he's got this like devil may care attitude, and everybody's just loves him, but they don't build it up from that perspective. They really don't, and it would have been to their advantage to do so, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, and like the film's 2 hours long, right? Like there's
a lot of time. Yeah,
there's a lot of time.
It's weird talking about a 2-hour film now in the context of like Christopher Nolan and modern filmmakers who are going like 2.5, 3 hours on the regular, you know?
Yeah. I do feel like Christopher Nolan though, he earns that time, usually. And he's always doing something with it. But
okay, let's talk about, because we haven't really touched on the animation style, and I know it's sort of a hard topic to enter into because I've seen so much since this movie that probably was influenced by it, and I didn't know that it was influenced by that sort of thing. It's just hard once you become habituated to seeing something. I can't see it as novel anymore, right? I don't have that access point. I like the animation in a few ways. I thought the characters were drawn well enough. Their action was a bit like blocky. The city was really cool.
One thing I really liked.
I don't know.
One thing I was gonna say is, near the beginning, the one thing I really liked about the bikes is that like when they would go and go through motion, the lights would stay. The light trail, right?
Yeah, that was cool. That was sort of like a softer, romantic. It like romanticizes the act of moving fast around in the city, right? Like this is, how do you relate to a city that has no place for you socially, that is on the verge of a second collapse, sort of thing, that is so alienating in terms of its like urban texture. You speed up. You just you go fast, you do violent things. That's supposed to be the atmosphere. It's sort of like a Mad Max, I think,
Yeah.
feel to it. Fury Road. Like I was reminded in the opening sequence with the opposing chief of the chief of the opposing bike gang of Fury Road, like really, really directly.
Mm.
Looks like Imperator or whatever.
Excuse me. Um, yeah, I don't know. I feel, I don't know. I wonder if I'm missing something, but I don't think I am. Uh, and clearly, it was an influential film because a number of places directly stole some of its ideas, uh, and in terms of like the city and all that sort of stuff. But I just like I one thing I actually wrote down here as well is like it says that I feel like I've been given very little chance for hope, right? So like even if they stop Tetsuo, like what is there left? And like if there's just no like little flower in the grass or like flower in the crack of the concrete kind of thing, right? Where it's just there. If we can stop this, there's a hope for something better. And I guess it backloaded I think all the things that it needed. It backloaded into the end of the film, right? Like Tetsuo, like caring about Tetsuo, the hope, the like Kaneda having some sense of like the girl caring for Kaneda and stuff, and it's just like the first bit was just Tetsuo being a complete dick to people and blowing shit up, which was interesting, but like sort of emotionally unfulfilling, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think you're totally right about that. Like, I don't mind. I understand that at the end of a film, especially when it's like sort of an ultimate confrontation, and especially when the stakes are as high as they possibly can be, that everything is accelerated, and you have to go through this whole like process of internalization of things that we may have only been able to infer before. We've been given clues. Now we see how deep seated certain jealous emotions are, certain anxieties about being protected that Tetsuo holds, and that sort of thing. I don't mind that. That's the moment when we dig in a different way, but it did, like, you're right, there's nothing to hold on to before that, and when you backload it that heavily, it's just an imbalanced film, I think.
Yeah, and it feels almost like you're being like, okay, and just in case they don't care about these characters, quick, let's try and make sure that they do, right? Whereas, like, I'm sure that wasn't the intention of the filmmaker in any sense, but it's just, like, only because we've seen so many films and are, like, as a sort of an audience, fairly in tune of, like, what story structures are and arcs are now, we go, oh, okay, he probably is jealous, whatever, but, like, they don't actually give us any emotional moment, visual clue, anything to actually be, like, okay, right? Because, like, often what we need for emotional moments to actually have impact is something to resonate with, right? Resonate with. So, like when you see a character being bullied or, someone losing a best friend or a best friend suddenly turning on them or whatever, like we all have an experience that we usually link to being like, I remember when my best friend did that, or, oh man, my best friend only did this. That must have been so much worse, right? Something to basically take our own experiences to dig into, right? But one is just we can only infer, and there's nothing actual fertile soil to like dig our own experiences in. That's when we don't care anymore, or at all in the first place, right? I think at this point right now we're just sort of spinning the same thing over and over again. One thing I will bring up that I thought was kind of interesting is that I found the score or the soundtrack kind of voicey. Or like if they would actually use like the voice, so it's like ha 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 no,
Yeah,
so
actually, you know what? The soundscape, I really liked.
Yeah, and like
I thought it was like inventive. You didn't get a lot of the same sounds, but they used voicey textures at times, and it was sort of like tribalistic and very interesting. And I don't know. Yeah. I like the soundscape a lot, actually.
Yeah,
I think it probably inspired similar ones later. I don't because I've heard things like that since, but before that, I don't know. Especially in the setting of like an urban jungle, they really. I think they sort of nailed that.
Yeah, and I think that's something that they did very well. And as you said, like, it's not a setting that you would necessarily expect that. Like, you might expect it in, like, in the jungle where like humans are, at their most primal or whatever. And like the interactions that they use it in were usually sort of the more high octane, high pressure conflicts, and it's like that
Yeah.
they get their primal in that sense. But like all around them is just like hunks of metal and um, all this, like you see a lot of futuristic stuff. So it's sort of a kind of weird but really interesting contrast. But some voices in a soundtrack or a score doesn't fix all your character design issues. So
Yeah.
I don't have anything else to bring up. But do you?
I don't too much. I don't have too much else to say other than I think this film just sort of underwhelmed me. I think a lot of that has to do with my distance from it in time. And if it was as influential as people say it was, then obviously it underwhelmed me because I'm already familiar with certain things that it may have introduced. So it's hard to give it a fair assessment, as in terms of responding to its like influential nature.
Yeah.
But watching it now, I think I could have gone without watching it, and I would have been happy. I think I've seen other films that do certain aspects of this better. The sort of urban decay setting, the dystopic thriller, the sort of wanton street violence and that sort of thing. I've seen all those now done better in other films, and so it's hard to appreciate them all trying to come together at once. I think it's very ambitious, and I don't know if I have given it enough credit throughout. It does have a lot of cool avenues that it could have taken, and if it had expanded on the character dynamic even just a bit more, then it might have been an excellent film.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems like there are some minor things that could have been fixed that would have made a big difference for me, and it seems like there are some major things that would need to be fixed to make it really an excellent movie. Like I'm uninterested by the theme of ultimate power corrupts absolutely. I've read Heart of Darkness, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah, fair enough.
And it's sort of a boring theme. I'm interested more in now, like alienation and disaffection and these sort of like postmodern themes of loneliness and stuff that in the internet age or whatever digital distance. That's sort of what I'm mainly interested in, and I think there's an opportunity to meditate on stuff like that in a film like this sparseness of the city. You only see other people that aren't integral to the storyline. Whenever there's like a big destruction, it's like, oh, look at the human cost of this destruction. There are people dying, but you never see like a crowded street or anything. It's all like empty until the military or the police show up to intervene in like the violence that these bike gangs carry out. I mean, there's a couple school scenes, so I guess I'm not being totally fair, but for the most part, it's just this like little cast of characters, and they're not set against like a real human landscape. It's just the buildings and the metal and like the materiality of city, that they're responding to, which is,
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, I think that is a pretty good sort of summation of our thoughts and left some people to think with. So
yeah, I don't have anything exactly new to say. It's just like repeating myself. Sorry.
No, I thought it was a good summary of it all. But I don't have anything else to say. I think what Torin said, it was just sort of like we are definitely open to the idea that it was immensely influential. But as he says, like we have a very difficult time accessing that through sort of our distance in time. So with that, I'm still going to give it a B minus. With the space in my heart, knowing that it could have easily been an A film if I was born 20 years ago. 25.
Yeah.
All right.
I have to agree.
All right. Take care, Internet. Again, I'm Paul Weston. That's Tom McLaughlin. And we'll be back again soon. Peace.
Yeah, do what you do, Internet. Boom, boom, boom.